Hello my dear students, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is video number 2 comprising of the Anglo-Norman period. In our previous video, we have successfully covered Anglo-Saxon period or the Old English period, talking about the social, historical, political background, along with that the literary background, the major works and manuscripts of the age. We have also chalked down the history of the English language, how it was developing from the dialects and how English tribes, the Mercian tribes, they settled on the English Isle and came here as mercenaries to fight against the Picts and Scots. Romans, they left in 410, and once they left, the complete English Isle, the complete Britain fell into the hands of these tribes, Angles, Saxons and Jutes. And these three tribes worked their way out and became the dominant tribes and became the permanent settlers of the English Isle. And once they started spreading their pagan religion. But soon it was interrupted by the Christianization. There was Christianization from Irish missionaries, from Roman Empire, and by the context of King Alfred the Great. So there is a complete blend of the pagan religion and the Christian religion that could be seen in the very first epic, the old Germanic epic, that is Beowulf. We have seen that how Anglo-Saxon poetry is divided across 4 parameters. The first poets, Caedmon and Cynewulf, and their signed poems. Caedmon is known for the hymns, whereas Cynewulf is known for his signed poems, The Dream of the Rune and Andreas. Because these are signed poems, that is why the conjectured thing that we associated with the Anglo-Saxon age gets to the extant knowledge. So far there is no printing press. Whatsoever was told in the tales, legends, fables was transmitted orally only. But now let us take forward our discussion. So we have completely covered. If you haven't seen that video, I request you once again that you go and view that video in order to make the most out of this video. So Middle English period is from 1066 to 1350 AD. We have so far seen that Christianization has taken place. Christianization or the Christian religion is there now. There is this permanent there is this kingly rule, King Alfred the Great and his heirs completely, they were ruling the English Isle. And now what is Middle English period all about? Middle English period is all about the development of the English language and nation. Development of English as a language, and England as a state. England's nationalism. So far what we know is all conjectured. It is completely in doubt that whether this thing happened or not. But now from that conjectured thing, England's social, historical, political, literary background or the literally happenings, they were now being converted into the extant form, more stabilized, more standardized. Language was being stabilized. Nationalistic fervor was there. They considered this place as their own nation, as their own isle, as their own place of residence, and as a result of which whatsoever was written was completely indigenous English. But why we call this period as Anglo-Norman period? Or because of the Norman conquest. Middle English period, I tell you people, is divided across 3 periods, because these are the 3 periods in which English nation developed. Out of the dialects, one dialect grew, used by Geoffrey Chaucer during this age, making him the father of English literature, father of English poetry. That the cause of today's video is this phase only. In this video, we are going to discuss from 1066 to 1350, the Anglo-Norman period. This all is the Middle English period. This all is the Middle English period. In our previous video, we have discussed the Old English period. So today we are going to discuss Anglo-Norman period. 1350 to 1400 is age of Chaucer. Age of Chaucer, where Chaucer wrote in English language his famous work, The Canterbury Tales. The Canterbury Tales. And the English that he used was East Midland dialect. And East Midland dialect is our present English, the English that we use. This question has been asked so many times, that why Chaucer is known as the father of English poetry, English literature. He is known as the father because he pioneered the usage of language in literary terms. He wrote his magnum opus. He wrote his main work, The Canterbury Tales, in East Midland dialect. But in our previous video, we have seen that Wessex dialect was much more famous, all because of King Alfred the Great, or England's darling, who promoted English learning through translation. So, before coming to age of Chaucer, let us discuss a Anglo-Norman age. Why this age is known as Anglo-Norman age? Anglo refers to the Celts, to the angels, because we have, in our previous video, we have seen that there were three prominent tribes: angels, Saxons, and Jutes. So angels becomes angels for English. And who were Normans? Who were Normans? Normans were Northmen of France. Normans were Northmen of France. So far, we are able to recognize the fact that English people, English community had been a tribal community where there was no set dialect, no set rule. But with the advent of the Anglo-Norman period, we see stability, we see standardization of language. So far, with King Alfred the Great, English gained its nationalistic identity. It continued to gain, but that nationalistic idea or identity was questioned during Norman conquest. There's a story behind it. So far, three dominant tribes, angels, Saxons, and Jutes, they were dominating the England. They were dominating the England land. And with what happened, Edward the Confessor, the king, Edward the Confessor, who became king after Alfred, Alfred the Great. So Edward the Confessor died without an heir. They died without an heir, and he promised his throne to William, Duke of Normandy, and Normandy is in France. By his word of mouth, he promised his friend William, Duke of Normandy, because I have no heir, no Uttaradhikari, mere baad aap raja banenge. So what happened? He thought that I am rightfully the heir of England. Whereas King Edward the Confessor, he promised William, Duke of Normandy, but who became the king? Harold Godwin's son became the king, and because Harold Godwin's son became the king, this enraged William, Duke of Normandy, and as a result of it, he invaded England and fought battle, and that battle is known as Battle of Hastings. William, Duke of Normandy was essentially the conqueror. The battle took place at Hastings. This battle is also known as Norman Conquest. Happened in the year 1066. Who became the conqueror? William, Duke of Normandy, who was earlier the Duke of North region of France, became the ruler of English Isle. That is why this is known as Anglo-Norman period. Anglo-Norman period. Anglo for angels, Normans for Frenchmen, Normandy, and this period started in the year 1066. I hope this history is clear. So, because Harold Godwin's son became the king, William Duke of Normandy waged a war upon English region, conquered it, but it was not easy to kill Harold Godwin's son because he was heavily armored. He was wearing metal pieces. He was wearing armors that were so strong, bulletproof, bow-proof. So because it was not easy to kill him, William Duke of Normandy won the battle using his wit, using his brain. What did he say? He spread this news that because William Duke of Normandy called many archers, famous archmen, famous people who could use bow and arrow. So he called them in order to win this battle. But because he was so heavily studded with that metal arm suit, so William Duke of Normandy won the battle by his brain. He said this thing, he spread this thing that Harold Godwin's son has died. So the English army, the English people, the people who were fighting for Harold Godwin's son started to run away. They started running, as a result of which Harold Godwin's son had to remove that heavy armor from his face, and as he removed it, William Duke of Normandy shot him directly in his eye, in the eye of Harold Godwin's son. The way he removed it, only to make sure, only to tell his people that yes, I am alive. But what is the result? He was shot. As a result of which, Battle of Hastings was conquered by William Duke of Normandy in the year 1066, giving way to our Anglo-Norman period. This is indeed the social political, this is the political background of the age, political turmoil. What are mainly the results of the Norman conquest? This way, if you study all the things, the history right from the very start like a story, you will never forget it. So this way, William Duke of Normandy entered the English Isle. The conqueror was conquered because he was so overwhelmed by becoming the ruler of England, ruler of English people, that he was so happy. And he devoted his complete life to this rule with satisfaction. Because the king was satisfied, king was happy, the nationalistic ideas were bound to grow. There was peace now, there was stability and standardization. All was at peace. That is why there was complete mixing and blending of the French language and English language. William Duke of Normandy brought with him French language, and French language became the language of the upper class, whereas the clerical classes, we have already seen, clerical classes, people of church, they were already well known with the Latin language, whereas English masses, tribal masses, they were speaking English language. So England became a tri-language country or trilingual nation. So mark this down. This is a PYQ that after Norman conquest, how many languages were there? First is the French language, second is the Latin language, and third is the English language that was prevalent during that time. Stability was there because of this political stability, that one king, one nation was there, as a result of which positions were given. There was king, there were dukes, there were earls, there were barons, so there were knights. So these are the positions of repute that were held by English people. So there was this complete blend of French language, French religion, French belief system, French demeanor with the English demeanor. So this blend came out in the Anglo-Norman period. Even today, as we speak English language, we have so many words that we use of French language, and all because of this. But yes, with the Norman conquest, England gained a stabilized identity. So far, there were warriors, there were battles, there were invaders. But with the advent of the rule of William Duke of Normandy, there was stability. Whereas the inflectional system, because I have told you right from the very start that these lectures are not basic, but they go from basic to advanced. We are talking about each and every aspect. So we are using the growth of language also as a major parameter in understanding the age. So the inflectional system of the Old English weakened, because Old English language weakened, the language of the tribes, the language of the Celts, that weakened because of the class system that was now made. Upper class was using French, clerical class was using Latin, and tribal masses, they were using English. So the inflectional system, the word meaning system, the words, they got blend with the French words. For example, even today in our Indian language also, we use English. We type using English alphabet, but क्या, हाँ जी, the SMS language that we have. So that's the inflectional influence. We are speaking in Hindi but writing in English using English alphabet. So now we have completed the social, historical and political background. Now let's talk about the literary background. If we go back to the Anglo-Saxon age, we have so far seen that in Anglo-Saxon age also, the dominant genre was poetry. Poetry came much before prose. But yes, even before we have the official father of English prose, we had prose writings. We had homiletic prose. We had prose talking about the historicity, talking about the, for example, hagiography, the past of the kings, the past of any nation. So that was chronicled in prose. But way more important genre has to be poetry. So Anglo-Norman poetry is divided across three parameters. There are chronicles, there are romances, they are secular, didactic or religious. So these are by far the most important parameters in which the genre of Anglo-Norman period is being divided. First thing first, there was this play of meter also. During Anglo-Saxon period, alliteration was used, kenning was used, whereas during Anglo-Norman period, we had the rhythmic patterns, we had the rhyming scheme, and there was this debate poetry also. So because the growth was very much evident, everything was going from conjecture to being an extant, everything was going unknown to known. So this journey had been because of the shift of the culture, because of the shift of the age. Each year, after the passage of each decade, English Isle was changing in ideology, in mannerism, in demeanor, and also in terms of knowledge, sovereignty and wisdom. So this growth of English people, are you liking it? Are you able to understand it? So I request you people, please do hit like button. That really keeps me going. So let us take our discussion forward to the poetry of the Anglo-Norman period. First are the chronicles. Chronicles are basically the way you chronicle, the way you record the history of some nation, the history of the rule of some king, or the history of any kingdom. So chronicles were there: Lemons Brut, Joffrey of Monmouth, Historia Regum Britanniae. See, I tell you this thing very clearly for the students who are going to sit in this exam for the very first time. In this examination, not much questions are asked from this Old English period or Middle English period. Middle English means Anglo-Norman period. From these two videos, not much questions are asked, but it really is important to foreground the study. It is very much important for you to know the names of the works, so you never know that what is being asked in the chronology. If they are mentioning some chronicle of England, or some chronicle of France, or some romance of France, or some chronicle of England, and you are asked to match it down. So in order to arrange that chronologically, in order to do the match it questions, they ask the title of the works. Historia Regum Britanniae is often asked. Lymon's Brut is often asked, just in the chronology question and in the match it question. So you know that this works belongs to the Anglo-Norman period and this works belongs to the Old English period. Beowulf is asked because that's the very first work. You need to know that this has to be the option A. So after poetry, these are basically the two important chronicles, and they became base to many future works. Many future works. For example, R. William Shakespeare, he wrote many works of English, about many English kings. He talked about King Edward III. He has talked about King Richard II. So these chronicles gave way to their understanding. They gave them the historicity of their own nation. These chronicles were very important influence on the English works, English historical works. We have also seen that William Shakespeare has written almost 10 historical works talking about the history of the English kings. So in that way, these chronicles are important, and especially Bede's ecclesiastical history is very important, and Geoffrey of Monmouth's Historia Regum Britain, history of Britain, is very important because that chronicles the past. So that is why it becomes very important. And third chronicle is Robert Manning's Story of England. So these are primarily the historical works that record the English history. They record the Christianization, they record the rules of the various kings also. Then we have another genre, that is the religious and didactic poetry of the Anglo-Norman period. Religious and didactic poetry. The Orulum by Orm. It's a poem written by Orm. It's a very vast poem, but still incomplete. Next we have the very first example of the beast poetry. Beast poetry, or you can say debate poetry. We call it beast fable. The owl and the nightingale. Owl, who is known for his wisdom, and nightingale, who is very light-hearted, talking about the light hours of the day, talking in a very light manner. So the debate between owl and nightingale is heated. So that's the debate poetry, the owl and the nightingale. Then we have the Cursor Mandi. Cursor Mandi talks about the biblical history, the Christianity, the Christian religion. It talks about the New Testament and the Old Testament. It records it, and Cursor Mundi means the runner of the world. Who is the runner of the world? The Christian religion is the runner of the world. And then we have the prick of conscience. All these poems, Paul, purity, patience, they are religious at the same time didactic. They aim to give you a very important moral lesson. Paul, for example, is the early example of the dream vision. Dream vision, where the poet falls asleep and he dreams that he has lost a pearl, and on that journey of finding that pearl, he finds out the very fact that if he wants to attain stability, if he wants to attain pleasures of life, leisures of life, and also that luxury of life, so that he has to be born at New Jerusalem. So that's also very religious and didactic sort of poetry. So all these are the important titles of the Anglo-Norman poetry. Do note them down, take a screenshot and write them in your notebook. Next, Another most important genre has to be the genre of romance. We have seen that romance here does not mean the romance between a man or a woman. It is essentially a romance between warrior. It's a romance with chivalry. It is romance with between the knights who are fighting like true blue warriors, and their stories. Alexander the Great, Siege of Troy, and King Arthur, Sir Gawain, and Green Knight. These are but the romances that talk about chivalry, that talk about knighthood, that talk about your being truthful. So romance as a genre becomes very much important in the Middle English period, and it will follow the English romance of King Arthur. Basically the matter of the romance was taken across matter of Britain, matter of France, and matter of Rome. So रोमांस में जो भी लिखा जाता था उसकी इंस्पिरेशन ली जाती थी इन थ्री मैटर्स से। अब रोमांसेस कहाँ से जनरेट होते हैं? रोमांसेस जनरेट होते हैं लेजेंडरी टेल्स एंड लेजेंडरी फेबल्स से। सो यहाँ पर हम क्या देखते हैं, मैटर ऑफ ब्रिटेन में जो सबसे ज्यादा फेमस हमारा रोमांस रहेगा, रोमांस राइटिंग रहेगी, जिस पर बहुत सारी टेल्स आपको देखने को मिलेगी। किंग आर्थर की जो टेल है वो आपने मैंने हो सकता है किसी अलग ऑथर से पढ़ी हो, हमने पढ़ा होगा मैलरीज मॉर्टेडी आर्थर, लेकिन देयर आर सो मेनी इंस्टेंसेस ऑफ किंग आर्थर इन द राइटिंग, फॉर एग्जांपल इन स्पेंसर्स फेरी क्वीन आल्सो. So stories and stories, they are connected and weave together, and that becomes a romance. For example, King Arthur was a warrior who went after the Holy Grail, who was murdered by his own illegitimate son Mordred. How he saw the fickleness of his wife, that governor, and who cheated him with Launcelot, and as a result of which, because there was in the romantic writing, it was always in trade that there will always be the survival of the fittest. So here is the King Arthur, 12 Knights, also known as Knights of Round Table. If you spare some time, I request you people that you devote 1 to 2 hours in understanding the Arthurian romance, in knowing the legends of King Arthur, his quest towards finding the Holy Grail. So please, I request you people that do study more. Arthurian romance के instances आपको हर जगह इंग्लिश लिटरेचर में मिलने वाले हैं. सो ब्रिटिश लिटरेचर का, इंग्लिश लिटरेचर का एक बहुत फेमस रोमांटिक लेजेंड राइटिंग है, लेजेंड किंग रहे हैं किंग आर्थर. सो उनकी जो स्टोरीज है वो कंजेक्टेड रही हैं. सो कनेक्टिविटी बनाकर एक मोटी मोटी स्टोरी बना दी गई है कि वो होली ग्रेन लेने के लिए गए थे. ही डिड नॉट रिटर्न फॉर ईयर्स एंड ईयर्स, एंड बिकॉज he did not return, one of the knights of the round table that was gifted to him as a dowry gift, and one of the knights, because he left his region, he left his region, and he left the political stability, the political rule to this 12 knights of round table, and out of these 12 knights, one was Launcelot, who developed affair with the wife of King Arthur, that is Guinevere. So do study this thing, and all you can find all these things in Malory's Morte d'Arthur, Death of Arthur. Very important work. So this is Anglo-Norman romance, whereas for romance writing, matter also came from France. जैसे हमारे यहाँ हम पढ़ते हैं किंग आर्थर की स्टोरी, मैटर ऑफ रोम में हम पढ़ते हैं अलेक्जेंडर द ग्रेट की कहानी. अलेक्जेंडर द ग्रेट, ट्रॉय की स्टोरी हम पढ़ते हैं तो ये सब कुछ जो है वो इंटरकनेक्टेड होता है। रोमांस में प्राइमरीली रोमांस एज अ genre डील्स विद अ लेजेंडरी स्टोरी दैट हैज बीन पास्ड डाउन टू अस फ्रॉम ईयर्स एंड ईयर्स। उसमें एडिशंस एंड सब्सट्रैक्शंस होते रहते हैं और ये इन्फ्लुएंशियल वर्क्स होते हैं। दे इन्फ्लुएंस्ड मच मॉडर्न राइटिंग्स। Even today the reference of Arthur could be seen, the reference of Alexander the Great could be seen, and for example ट्रॉय, हेलन ऑफ ट्रॉय का हमें मिलता है। ट्रॉय इज अ नेम ऑफ अ प्लेस, सीज ऑफ ट्रॉय भी एक इंपॉर्टेंट हमारा रोमांस हो जाता है। सो ऑन दैट नोट वी कम टू आवर डिस्कशन ऑफ एंग्लो नॉर्मन पीरियड इन लेस देन 40 minutes. I think I have touched upon all the important aspects that I could remember for you people, but yes, there is always scope to study more. But if we look at the trend of the NTA-UGC NET examination, not much questions are asked from this section, but you need to know the titles, you need to revise the title, and you need to retain the titles in your mind. So on that note, this is Dr. Neha. If you have been able to gather some knowledge for Anglo-Norman poetry and you are able to subscribe to this WinNet series 2026 out of the sheer fact that we will be talking about the important canonical works here, targeting our aim to clearing JRF and qualifying JRF for this December attempt of NTA-UGC NET. So this is Dr. Neha thanking you once again and requesting you once again, please do like and comment your reviews. Thank you.